Africa could achieve during the next 40-year period essentially what China achieved during the period from 1980 to 2020.
Hey my lovelies, welcome back to my channel.
Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, and if you are new, I hope you will stay and you will join this amazing family. Hi guys. So guys, you guys know that I have said it countless times, okay, maybe not countless, but I've said it quite a number of times on this channel, that Africa's power and strength lies in our resources. It is incredible that over, I don't know how many percent honestly, but majority, the largest share of the resources of this world, natural resources, are found on the continent of Africa. And for that reason, the West for a long time has been trying everything they can to make sure that this continent remains stabilized, you know, because let's face it, this is a continent that if it should find its footing, is not mates with the rest of the world. The West knows this. All the world powers knows this. And it is just great that we are coming to a time where it seems like Africa is finally waking up. I don't know if you guys, I'll try to look for his name and put it on the screen. This man that came out and said, thanks to Macron, he has opened the eyes of Africa. And now African countries are demanding their worth, you know, and it's almost crippling what they are used to now in terms of their economy. Anyways, before we go further, I am going to now share this clip with you guys. So this man has come forward to talk about how Africa is going to be the next world power. Africa as a continent is going to be the next world power. And is it really far-fetched? Is it really far-fetched? Guys, I saw a video one time and I was looking for that video during my research and I could not find it. I hope that while I'm editing this video, maybe I would be able to include it. But what the video was saying was that Muammar Gaddafi, who was, you guys, I don't know, most of us know, the president of Libya, I think he is known mainly for being a tyrant and all of these things. And while I'm not saying he's not guilty of these things that I was accused, or at least some of them, you know, somebody came out and said the main reason that the West made sure that Gaddafi was executed was because he was calling for a united Africa, that African countries were to come together and to have their own world bank, a bank that would be the Bank of Africa, that would share, that will make African countries share a currency, and that this currency would be backed by the resources of Africa. And let me tell you, if the currency is to be backed by the resources found on the continent of Africa, do you think there would be, can ever be another currency that would ever even come close to being equal, not sort of surpassing? There can never be. Let me tell you why there can never be. Pounds is like the highest trading currency, even though we have other currencies like the Kuwaiti currency and all of that that's supposed to be higher. We are talking about in terms of world trading. The pounds, obviously after that is the euro, the USD, and we have all of these other dollars, Canadian dollars, and the rest of them. Now, the pounds is not backed by any natural resource. Is that not crazy? Is that not mind-blowing? The pounds is not backed by any natural resource. Is that not incredible? And we have Africa, that if its currency was to be backed by natural resources, we are talking about a continent that will have a currency that will be backed by cobalt, which is a precious resource that we honestly cannot survive without now, because it is in our phones, it is needed in batteries for cars, it is needed in literally everything that needs power that we use. We are talking about a currency that will be backed by petroleum, again, which you cannot survive without. We are talking about a currency that will be backed by gold, by diamond, by a ton of natural resources that is found on this continent. Some of them found on this continent are not even anywhere else. So it only makes sense that if Africa was to come to its own and to actually finally able to grow into its own, it would be unstoppable. It will be unstoppable. And so when this man came out and talked about how Africa is the next world power, I really could not dispute it, because let's face it, it is only about the leaders of these countries on the continent realizing that they do not need to sell out to the West. See, if you need to know if a president is doing right by a country, if you really want to know if an African president is doing right by a country, find out what the West thinks about him. Find out what the US thinks about him. If the West praises him, talks about how he's a great guy, know that he has sold out his country. Know that he is not doing anything in the best interest of the country. But if the US starts to badmouth an African leader, starts to talk about how he's a tyrant, how he's a this, he's a that, look more into it. Those are the few people that are doing something in the best interest of their countries, majority of the time. Not in all cases, but majority of the time. Anyways, let me share this video with you guys, and then we'll come back.
Africa could achieve during the next 40-year period essentially what China achieved during the period from 1980. I want to leave one message, and that is that Africa's growth prospects for the next 40 years are extremely strong. Africa could achieve during the next 40-year period essentially what China achieved during the period from 1980 to 2020. China, as you know, achieved economic growth averaging around 10% per year economic growth. Phenomenal. When anything grows at 10% per period or per year, it means that it doubles in 7 years. So China achieved that growth over 40 years. That means it was doubling essentially in economic size every 7 years. And in a 40-year period, that is 5 doublings, 35 years plus. So if you double 5 times, that's 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, that's a 32-time increase of output. China achieved about a 35-time increase of output from 1980 to 2020. And it went from a country of 1.4 billion people that was very poor in 1980 to either the second or the first largest economy in the world today, depending on how you measure things. If you measure the economy at what we call market prices, then China's number 2. If you measure the economy at what we call international prices, so a common set of prices for each sector comparing the US and China, then China's the largest economy in the world. And China went from being a low-income country to a high-income country in a period of just over 40 years. My view is that this is possible for Africa, and that this should be the aim. And it's actually quite convenient to speak about it now in 2023, because 40 years brings us to 2063, which of course is the birth of a unity of Africa, the Organization of African Unity, which in this great city, in this country, was founded in 1963. And all of Africa's aspirations are dated to the year 2063. I like that because it gives us a 40-year lead time. And development is a long-term process. It's not a short-term process. And if we take a 40-year lead time and consider Africa's starting point today, we should aim for nothing less than 8 to 10% per year compound economic growth over the next 40 years, so that African poverty will be a thing of the past, and Africa will be solidly a middle-income region of the world, and many parts of Africa high income in the world by 2063. And I want to explain why that is feasible, and as the title of the talk about finance suggests, why finance is so essential to achieving that objective. But the basic point is that economic development is a very high return activity if you do it right. And if you're lucky to avoid wars and calamities, so you have to stay peaceful. This is critical. And if the neighbors are getting along with each other, this is critical. Because economic development depends on a peaceful region, in this case a peaceful African continent, and an African continent that is in good relations with other parts of the world. That is for sure. But if that geopolitical environment can be achieved, and why not, then the economic side of the story is rather favorable. And the reason it's favorable is that if you do what I do for a living, which is Excel spreadsheets basically, and ask what are reasonable scenarios based on economic modeling and economic history for the kind of growth that can be achieved, what you find is that the returns to economic development of a poor region are just about the highest returns on investment of anything in the world. I'd rather invest in Ethiopia's future than in some high-tech company, because a high-tech company will not achieve compound interest returns of what Ethiopia can achieve of 15 to 20%, not rate of growth, but compound return on investment, which is a different concept. It's the financial return on the investments that are made. What's the real difference between the United States and Ethiopia in economic return, in economic basis? The real difference is that the United States, because of its history, many advantages and so forth, right now has a very high stock of assets for the people to benefit from. And the three main kinds of assets that the United States has are the education of the population, which averages right now about 15 years of average education, because in past history, people finished high school. And now, of course, 40% finish tertiary education. So it's about 16 years as of now, average years of education. A second gap is infrastructure. The physical infrastructure in the United States is robust and enormous. When I was a kid, I grew up in Detroit. Detroit was the motor city where all the automobiles were produced. So Detroit made sure politically that we built highways everywhere in the United States. And my youth was very much involved in listening to building the interstate highway system between 1955 and 1975 in the United States. And that was thousands and thousands of miles of highway that linked a continent at full scale. Ethiopia doesn't have that, and Africa doesn't have that. Right now, the physical connectivity in Africa is very low. It's low in all regards. It's low in paved roads, it's low in highways, it's low in power grid, it's low in fiber. But none of that is fundamental that can't be overcome. All of it is actually, in its way, rather straightforward investment. The technologies are known. NAPAD has produced the maps of where the grid should go, where the rail should go, where the power should go. So it's not a deep mystery, but that's the second big difference. And the third big difference, of course, is the business sector, the business investments. Business, why is business in the United States so robust? Well, one reason is simply there's a very skilled workforce, and there is all the infrastructure that's needed wherever the goods are produced. You can ship them to a port, you can put them on rail, the freight system is very good, and the power is reliable, and so forth. And so returns to private investment are indeed very high. Now, if you add up the physical capital in the United States, that is the infrastructure and the business capital, it's about $210,000 per person. The investments that are needed to overcome the current liabilities, poor infrastructure, poor connectivity, not enough rail, and so forth, is not that expensive when you think about the returns that will come from that investment.
Guys, I just, as much as it might seem like it is still a struggle, especially with what is going on in the Congo. All of the Western powers have invaded this country because of the resources that she's blessed with. All of them have invaded this country, trying to plummet, steal, ravage, do as much as they can. Mass genocide is happening in that country every day. It's almost as if they want to sweep all of them off the face of the earth so that they can plummet and plunder as they wish. But despite all of these things happening, you can see that there is an awakening going on the continent. We are talking about the likes of Ibrahim Traore. Things are happening. I think there is now more awareness that was not there before. And I think the reverence that used to be there for the West, thinking they are our friends, thinking they had our best interests at heart, I think people are coming to realize that that might not be the case. And honestly, I feel like it can only get better. Because the first place that we have to unshackle ourselves is in our heads. We have to first unshackle ourselves mentally. Only then can it translate to our actions physically. And I'm glad that a lot of people, especially the younger generations, are really waking up. And it's only a matter of time. Okay, so what this man said, I believe it's only a matter of time. Anyways, that's it for this video, guys. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like the video. And of course, do not forget to subscribe to the channel. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye, guys.